My name is Hannah. I am an instructor at Parr Library, and I'm being assisted today by Caitlin, my fellow instructor. Say hello, Caitlin.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well.
Cool beans. Caitlin will be perusing chat as I am screen sharing and can't see it super easily. So if you have any questions, type them in that chat box as we're going along. We're going to try and answer your questions. If we can't get to it while I'm doing the lesson, we will have some time at the end for some Q&A where you can kind of play around and ask us whatever questions you may have. Awesome, awesome. Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes, seconds maybe. Ooh, interesting tidbit for those listening right now. You can follow along if you have Photoshop at home, but if you don't have Photoshop, I believe Haggard and Davis Library are currently offering computer reservations for their Adobe computer. So you can give them a call if you're interested in skills to use. The computer appointments are available for 2-hour increments, and you can just give them a call and see if they have that computer available. Photoshop is a subscription-only software, so I believe you can purchase it for about $9.99 a month with the Lightroom bundle, or you can schedule an appointment at Haggard or Davis for free. So it's pretty neat. Okay, looks like our numbers have evened out, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I believe there is a Google Drive link. Caitlin, correct? Has that been posted in chat yet?
Yes, it has. You may need to scroll up. I will also post it again.
Awesome. Okay, that Google Drive link is going to contain our photos for today, our exercise files, and it should also contain Photoshop Basics handout. How I structure my classes in person and virtually is with this handout, we're going to go over it verbatim, word for word. So all you have to do is just follow along or just observe. You don't have to worry about finding the specific page area and taking notes, because whatever we're covering will be on this handout word for word. Okay, so what is Photoshop? Photoshop is a software used to create and enhance photographs, illustrations, and even 3D artwork. Photoshop changes images by altering pixels. So pixels are those little squares that make up a photo whenever you zoom in really close. And it alters these pixels in 2 ways. We're going to cover it in class today. One way is directly by rewriting the properties of the pixels themselves. We're going to focus on spot healing and clone stamp today. This is known as destructive editing, because whatever changes you make are permanent. The second option is indirectly altering pixels by overlaying additional information on top via what are called layers. I love using layers more than I love directly rewriting the pixels themselves, because layers you can turn off and on, delete at any time. You can always undo your mistakes. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up Photoshop, open up an image so I can show you the workspace. So I'm going to go down to open, and I have those class files saved onto my desktop. So I'm going to open up this one. So this is Photoshop and all of its bells and whistles. This very top bar up here that has a little tiny, tiny blue PS icon, file, edit, image, layer, etc. That is your menu bar. It features standard menu options like file, edit, save as, export, and some other filter options that are fun to play with, and some image options that you can mess with. The options bar is below that. It has a little home icon, and these attributes right here where it says, it's really tiny, I do apologize. It says feather, style, stuff like that. This options bar will actually change based on which tool you have selected. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to select the text tool. Let's see. And if you notice, this options bar has changed. So this options bar will have specific attributes for each tool that you have selected. You change it to the eraser tool and it changes once again. Up here in the upper right below your X icon and next to this magnifying glass, this is workspace options. You can click it and select a different layout for Photoshop. I tend to play around in photography and painting. Photoshop is a powerful painting tool if you're interested in illustration. And I also just do a lot of photo editing. But for now, we're just gonna stay in essentials. You can peruse those other options whenever you're getting deeper into Photoshop, but essentials will do just fine for now. Over here, you saw me clicking earlier on this far left bar with all these little tiny icons. This is the toolbar. It features tools organized by function. So up here we have our selection tools used for selecting specific areas of your photo. And the tools have been grouped together, feature a little tiny triangle in their lower right of their little box. If you right click that, there are subtools in there that are similar but have a slightly different functionality. So Photoshop tries to keep it nice and organized and less cluttered. So you just have to right click whenever you see one of those little triangles in the lower right. Okay, this area in the center with the photo, that is your document window / workspace / canvas, depending on what you're doing. This is the area where the image you are working on shows up. This area to the right, these are all of your panels. Select different ones based on what you're doing. I tend to just keep it at the default that Photoshop gives me. So let's see here, this is our layers panel down here. We're gonna learn a lot about layers today and also adjustments. You can also drag and drop these panels anywhere on your workspace. But from personal experience, I tend to mess that up pretty easily, so I just keep it by the default. Okay. So for those of you who are interested in using Photoshop for illustration, we're not going to get into illustration today, but I will show you how to create a blank canvas so you can get started with drawing. I'm going to go up to File. I'm going to select New. And I don't like to work in a 7x5, so I'm going to work in a big document. I'm going to click on width, type in 18, click on height, type in 12. I like to keep it at 300 pixels per inch. It's a pretty beefy file size, but I like to start out big and then export small because you can't do the opposite. You can't start out small and then export big. So I like to have the option. And I like to just add 16 bits of color in case I feel like getting fancy later. And I keep it in RGB because that is the most common color format for monitors and phone screens, stuff like that. Hit create. And this is your blank canvas. You can draw on it by selecting B on your keyboard and drawing away. Okay. I will say if you are working on our computers at Haggard or Davis, since they currently have some Adobe computers available, you will want to save to your own USB device whenever you come in, because our computers will delete whatever file you're working on if there's any loss of power or if your computer reservation ends. So make sure you go up to File, Save As, save on your computer, and then find a spot to save it. Otherwise, it will be gone forever. Okay, so we're gonna exit out of this, Exit out of that. Your most recent files will appear in this recent panel whenever you're working in Photoshop. So it's pretty convenient. All right. So if anyone is following along and you have gotten to the Google Drive link, if you would please download some of the images. We're going to be working with the image titled Dark. So I previously opened it. Go ahead and open it again. This image is titled Dark. So as you can see, it is artistically a little bit darker, a little bit more mysterious signs right there. And we are going to first apply an adjustment layer, just a general broad adjustment layer. So if you go over here, I think by default, Photoshop will open with Learn available, which it has some great tips and tricks. Go ahead and click Adjustments, in that middle panel. And this little tiny sun icon says Brightness and Contrast. If you just click that once, this little Properties panel appears. And if you've noticed in the Layers panel down here, Brightness and Contrast has appeared above your main image. So I'm just gonna left click and drag the brightness up until I can kind of clearly see those signs and see the color of that little house. Or I can drag it down and make it even darker. So I'm gonna leave it right about there. You can also manually adjust your brightness and contrast by selecting the number in this box, typing one in, and it will update it for you so you don't have to get it just right. Do 75 there. And a great thing about Photoshop in the Layers panel is down here where you see that little eye icon, you can toggle that off and on at any time. You can preview what your photo looked like before you applied the changes and after. So that's pretty convenient. You can also just hit delete if you wanted to get rid of it altogether. So that's a great way to make some changes without altering the photo directly. Okay, let's see here. Actually, let's do right here. I'm going to turn that layer off. Minimize that. This tool up here is the marquee tool. There's a couple of different shapes you can use as a little subtool. I just use the rectangular marquee tool the most. And we're going to make changes to a specific area of this photo. So if I didn't want to get all of this selected, I'm going to select the marquee tool, keyboard shortcut M as in man on your keyboard. And I'm gonna left click and drag from the upper left. I'm gonna drag it down to where that line goes about halfway across that little house, I'm assuming lifeguard house. And I'm gonna let go. And these little lines are moving. It's funny, it's actually called dancing ants. That's the official term for that moving line. I thought that was funny. And basically, this is Photoshop saying, okay, this is the area you want. Great, let's make some changes. So with that area selected, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna select brightness and contrast. And boop, the dancing ants went away. But if you notice on your layers panel, there's a tiny little icon down there that has half white, half black, and it's showing that this area still exists, and I can apply some changes to it. Whoa, neat. So it's just right down the middle there. Turn it off and on. Okay, cool. But let's say if you wanted to apply that change to an even more specific area, I can show you how to do that next. Caitlin, are there any questions so far that I can help answer?
We do have a question about the photo brightness. So
Awesome.
if the photo was taken at night, sort of similar to this option,
Mhm.
example that you have, can you make it look bright and clear through this adjustment?
Yes, to an extent. Um, I wish I had a very underexposed photo to show you, but let's see here. There is an option whenever you increase the brightness of a photo. Let's say if the original photo you took is very underexposed, it's very dark, you can change it with brightness, or you can also change it with the exposure adjustment layer. The only warning that I have for that is if your photo is very underexposed, you're going to get what's called either noise or grain. It's where your camera didn't have enough light to begin with, so it's kind of guessing at what's where. And you're going to see a lot of little specks in your photo. Um, there is a filter option in Photoshop to help get rid of this. I'll show it to you, but there's plenty of different ways to get rid of noise and grain. But you just click up to filter and boop, noise, and there's a reduce noise option. If your photo is too dark, sometimes there is no saving it. But if you're willing to explore the brightness and exposure aspect and go up to filter and try and reduce some of that noise, you can salvage most photos. I have definitely ruined quite a few in my lifetime by taking them way too dark, but sometimes they're salvageable. Any other question? Did I get that one? Okay,
We had a follow-up.
cool.
Do you know if they used flash in the original photo, will that affect kind of the situation with adjusting brightness, or is that just going to kind of lead you to the same options to adjust?
I mean, if you use flash in the original photo, I mean, that helps just to bring the exposure up in general. But if the overall photo is too dark, you're left with pretty much the same options of exposure or brightness, and then that noise option, reduce noise option is pretty much your only bet that I know of. But, you just pop a question into YouTube and there's 20 different ways to fix a photo. So please explore that at your leisure. This is just how I know how to do it. All right. I will move on to the next part, but if any of y'all have any questions, put them in chat. We'll answer them as we can. The next photo we're going to work with is titled Marigold. So if you have the files downloaded, go up to File, Open, and select that beautiful flower, Marigold. I know it's probably actually not a marigold. I think it's a completely different looking flower, but this is just what the photo was titled. Okay, so for this one, we're going to learn how to select a very specific area of a photo, because sometimes you don't want to apply changes to the entire photo. You want to apply it just to a small section. And we can't do that with the marquee tool. We can only select it in a square or a rectangle. So this fun tool right below that marquee tool is the lasso tool, keyboard shortcut of L. So if you would select the lasso tool, and the trick with the lasso tool is you have to meet up with your origin point. So you have to start. I'm going to select one petal. I'm going to left click and drag. And I'm drawing with my mouse, so bear with me. I'm going to left click and drag around one petal. And I'm going to meet up with my origin point as best I can. I'm going to let go. And then this tiny little area, I'm going to zoom in for you. This tiny little area has been selected. And I'm ready to edit. If you don't meet up with your origin point, so let's say if I wanted to select this area right here, and I did not meet up with my origin point at the top, Photoshop is going to guess as best it can, which is not very good, where you meant to go. And it's going to create a very straight line from your finishing point to your beginning point. So as long as you meet up with your origin point, you will be good to go. So I'm going to do that again. I'm left click and dragging. Okay. Awesome. And I'm going to show you what's called feathering, because if you don't do feathering, you're going to get a very sharp line. And we don't want super sharp lines for this. So I'm going to undo. We want to make the border of this selection a little bit softer so it blends better. So with your area selected, with those dancing ants marching around, I'm going to right click and I'm going to select feather. I'm going to keep it at 5 pixels. That's the default. You can always increase it to create a broader, softer border. So if you're applying vignettes or shadows, you can make it really soft by increasing that number. I'm going to keep it at about 5. I'm going to select OK. And then instead of selecting brightness and contrast, I want to change the color of this one petal. So I'm going to go down to hue and saturation. Left click it. And I'm just going to change the hue. Whoa, I want a blue petal. Neato. Okay, I'm going to show that process again. This time I'm going to select the center part of the flower. I'm going to meet up with my origin point. Perfect. I'm going to select feather. Okay. And I'm going to select that hue and saturation. Again, there is an option of color balance if you'd like to have a little bit finer tuning of your color editing, but I'm going to go for hue and saturation. Ooh, I'm going to keep it at purple. That looks pretty cool. Turn that off and on. Neato. All right, that's the lasso tool. I probably use the lasso tool 10 times more than I use the marquee tool. I tend to change a lot of small aspects whenever I am photo editing. So the lasso tool will be your best friend. There's a little tip I like to give to where if you are selecting a petal and then you go way out, you don't have to start over. You can meet up with your origin point. You don't want that area selected. So with your lasso tool active, holding Alt on your keyboard causes a little minus icon to appear where your mouse is. And I'm going to draw a shape around the area that I don't want, and it goes away. So holding Alt takes away from your selection. So you don't have to get your drawing right the first time. That gets very frustrating. I like to make small little selections. To add to your selection, holding Shift on your keyboard with your lasso tool active will add to that selection as long as you meet up with your origin point. So if I wanted to get 2 petals at the same time, I'm holding Shift and I am just drawing up a storm. I'm going to feather, keep it at 5. And let's go. Ooh, let's do some dark blue. Ooh, maybe I'll do a nice purpley pink. So yeah, the lasso tool will be your absolute best friend. Any questions on lasso tool selecting, anything like that so far?
None have come through the chat yet, but please feel free.
All right, cool beans. We're cooking with gas. Okay. So let's move on to one of my favorite procedures. It's called blemish correction. Okay, so I'm going to go up to File, go up to Open, and this poor person is shocked. She woke up with blemishes on her face, as most of us do, I would say. Let's see here. I am zooming in closer by selecting Z. Z is in zombie on my keyboard. You can also left click this little magnifying glass over here. And I am left click and dragging to the right to zoom in, and I'm left click and dragging to the left to zoom out. You can also just left click to zoom in and hold Alt and left click to zoom out. I'm just going to left click and drag it in. I want to get close up with this person's face. All right, so this tool over here, I'm going to right click it. It looks like a little band-aid. There's the spot healing brush tool and the healing brush tool. I prefer to use the healing brush tool myself because I like to do things pretty manually on my pieces. And so I'm going to show you how to do it this way. Feel free to play with the spot healing brush tool, but I'm just going to right click and I'm going to select healing brush tool. Before I mess with anything on this photo, we are about to do some destructive editing. So we are going to edit the pixels directly. I like to have a backup plan in case I accidentally mess something up, which happens all the time. So I'm going to right click this background layer in the lower right. You notice it has a little lock icon because Photoshop is trying to remind you, hey, don't edit this photo directly because if you do, it's permanent. So I'm going to right click this. I'm going to select duplicate layer. If you are using a lot of layers, please have the good practice of renaming them so you don't end up losing your mind later like I do because I have 20 layers and I don't know what each one is. But for now, I'm just going to keep it as background copy because we don't have a whole lot of layers to deal with. And if you noticed, there is no lock icon. So that means we can edit this photo to our heart's content. And if we mess up, just delete the layer and start over. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hit Z on my keyboard and I'm going to zoom in to the blemishes. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here and select my healing brush tool. So the biggest thing with the healing brush tool is whatever you are editing out, whether it be a blemish, a scar, anything like that, you want to make sure your brush diameter, so this circle that you see, I hope, in the middle of the canvas, you want to make sure that brush diameter is slightly bigger than the blemish you are working with. You don't want it to be too large. So I'm going to decrease the size of it by using the bracket keys on my keyboard. If you use the left bracket key, makes it smaller. Right bracket key makes it larger. I can make it huge. You can also do so up here on the options bar by click and dragging that down. But I prefer to have it right on top of that blemish. I'm going to have it slightly larger. So with this healing brush tool, we have to tell Photoshop, I want you to take this area that doesn't have a blemish and I want you to put it over this blemish so it looks like it's not there. So to do that, I'm going to hover over an unaffected area of the skin, but it has to be nearby because you want to make sure you aren't sampling from a very dark area or a textured area. So I'm going to hover over this area right here next to the blemish. I'm going to hold Alt on my keyboard and my little brush icon has turned into a target or a little bullseye. That means you're telling Photoshop sample from here. So I'm going to left click once, let go of Alt. I'm going to hover. And if you noticed, Photoshop has already given me a preview of what it would look like. So I'm going to left click once over the blemish. It's gone. Spooky. So once again, for this area right here, this blemish, if you notice it's right along a cheekbone. So there's some shadows right in there or some highlights on the top of the cheekbone. So use your best judgment of where you need to sample from. So I'm going to sample directly to the left. So I'm going to hold Alt. I'm going to left click. I'm going to let go of Alt. And then I'm just going to left click over that blemish. And it's done. If you noticed, whenever you left click, there is a little plus icon that appears. And that is telling you where Photoshop is sampling from. So if you ever lose your anchor point, that is where it is. So for here, I'm going to hold Alt, left click. Let's see here. Yeah, right there. Awesome.
Anna,
Yes.
we have a good question here in the chat.
Mhm.
Is there a non-keyboard option for doing the sample collection? So rather than selecting Alt, what would be the alternative?
For sampling, that is a good question. I only know of Alt. I'll show you if you don't have access to an Alt on your keyboard. The spot healing brush tool will fulfill the same purpose. You won't be able to customize it as much. So I'll show you how to do that as kind of an alternative solution. I'm going to left click spot healing brush tool in that little subtool set. And I'm going to change the brush diameter. And with this one, let's see if this works. You don't have to sample. Boop. It will just go away on its own. And this is basically you're trusting Photoshop to do the best job that it can. So I tend to be a little bit more much of a stickler, I guess you could say, but the regular healing brush or the spot healing brush tool should do the job for most pieces. And if you guys ever find that you have messed up, you've applied a change somewhere you didn't want, if you hold Control and tap Z, Z is in zombie, it will undo what you have just done. So that's pretty neat. Control Shift Z will redo. So if you go back too far, it's a good option. If you're sampling from, if you accidentally sample from up here, like from the eyeball, oops, go back to this. So I accidentally sampled that eyeball and I boop, oh no, she has a piece of her eyeball down there. You just want to make sure you're conscientious of where you are sampling from to make sure it doesn't appear out of place. I want to make it look as natural as possible. Okay, cool. And there's that. She is blemish free. It's a great secret to know how to remove blemishes from photos because, if you have any social media images of yourself out there, you get to, present your flawless skin to the world and also know that every photo is a lie. You can touch up all of your Facebook photos to your heart's content. That was before. That one's after. Caitlin, any questions on that so far?
Just more particulars over whether the spot healing brush would work on the cheekbone as well. It should, but it's still trusting that Photoshop will make that adjustment for you.
Yep, that's right. Because Photoshop is very powerful, but there's nothing like that artistic touch you get by manually adjusting everything yourself. But if you're just looking for a quick fix, absolutely, that spot healing brush tool should do the job.
Other comments are just in reference, if you don't have the Alt available on your keyboard, it could be that you have a different device like a MacBook. I would just recommend looking up those alternative shortcuts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with Mac in the slightest, but there should be some, like a chart out there that has the keyboard shortcuts listed. Let's see, we have time to do a little extra project. This one is my favorite. besides the blemish correction, because that one is just very satisfying to do. I'm going to select whiten teeth. So if you're anything like me, sometimes, you like to enjoy the occasional soda or coffee. And maybe your teeth show that. Everybody's teeth has a little bit of a yellow tint naturally. So I'm going to show you in the time that we have left how to whiten teeth. There are about 50 different ways to get it done. So if my way does not work for you, please feel free, Google it. We have some additional resources at the end of the class handout for Linda classes that you can take that will teach you just about every way to edit a photo. So with whitened teeth opened and my lasso tool selected, I'm going to zoom in to these teeth and I'm gonna draw around the teeth as best I can, meeting up with my origin point. So I'm left click and dragging with the lasso tool. So I have half of the teeth selected. I would like to get the other half. So I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to left click and drag, moving around the edges of the teeth, trying to get as in line as possible. There we go. Okay, meet up with my origin point. Cool, that's pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit up here by holding shift. Okay, good, good, good. Okay, you can also just do this with one tooth if you wanted, just to save yourself the hassle. So with the teeth selected, I'm going to right click. I'm going to select feather. I'm going to keep it at 5 still. And then first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to color balance. I'm going to left click it. So teeth naturally have a little bit of yellow in them, so I'm going to take that yellow out by moving this slider over to blue. I'm going to add blue to help negate that yellow. And I like to add a little bit of cyan because sometimes you notice a little bit of a reddish tint. I'm going to take that over. Okay, it's looking good. I can already see that I'm going to have to select this tooth again, but I'm going to wait for now. If you don't want to redraw that exact selection, which is totally okay, I'm going to go down to this little black panel right here, and I'm going to right click it. I'm going to select Add Mask to Selection. Awesome. So it adds what you just drew back in, so you don't have to keep redrawing it. And this time, I'm going to add some brightness, because who doesn't want a shiny, bright smile? I'm just going to drag that to the right, add a little bit. You can't add too much because then it looks real funky. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of brightness. Oh, that's already looking so much better. Perfect. All right. I'm going to hit up that tooth down here one more time just because I want that one really pearly white. Select L to bring up my lasso tool. Draw around that one little problem tooth. Right click, feather, 5, wonderful. Select that color balance again. I'm going to drag that blue over. Oh, that's looking good. That's looking much better. Awesome. All right. Yeah, that's it. That is how to apply a brightness and a little bit of white to your teeth. So you can fix blemishes, you can fix teeth, everything. You can do whatever you want in Photoshop. Anything is possible. The last step before we open it up for just Q&A, if y'all have anything, I'm going to show you how to save this image. I usually go down to File, Save As, Save on your computer. And I click this little drop down under Save As Type, and I select JPEG. So you're going to want to change it. I already have another version in here, so I'm just going to call this one White Teeth. Select save. I usually save as either high or maximum. Save it as maximum, just telling it to be as big as possible. And that's it. You have saved your image. Should be in your folder. And you are done. That is the basics of Photoshop. Are there any questions I can answer?
Yes. So, um, can you do some of these changes on the original layer without duplicating it? If
What do you
we,
mean, like the doing it on the background layer?
I believe that is what they're asking.
You can. Let me see if I can unlock it. I think you have to unlock it. It still makes a layer, I believe. Let me see. So even if, boop, I select this, I think, yeah, it still creates a layer. There are ways such as the brightness, and let me undo that. To adjust the brightness, I believe it's called the either the dodge tool or the burn tool. Let me see if that does it. Okay, it looks like the burn tool darkens, the dodge tool lightens. So if you would like to edit your photo directly and increase the brightness, you'll make a background copy. You can select the dodge tool to kind of increase some brightness there. It does get a little bit washed out, so I'd say use it cautiously, but it is an option if you would just like to edit the photo directly. Hopefully that answers that question. And I'll just be playing in Photoshop for a little bit. As questions come in, let me know. I'm happy to answer whatever I can.
So we've got a couple fun questions. They're specific to editing old photos.
Okay.
Do you have any recommendations on how someone might fix scratches or lines on old photos?
Ooh, I know the person who taught that class. There are a couple of different ways to fix a scratch photo. I don't have an example in there. Let me do some digging real quick. I might have it in one of these. Here we go. Let's do Faded Man. There might be some crinkles in that photo. Open with. There's like one little wrinkle up there, some fade marks. I use a tool called the clone stamp tool to fix a lot of issues in photos. There are much better ways to, it's photo restoration is the process, and there are some YouTube tutorials out there that are pretty great. But I'm going to show you, I'm going to make a copy of this layer. I'm going to show you the clone stamp tool because it is one of my favorite tools in Photoshop. So let's see. Don't know if it's up by default. I'm going to hit S. There it is. S on my keyboard brings up the clone stamp tool. I have a background copy created, and I just want to get rid of some of this, these lines or some dirt on there. It's the same process as the healing tool. I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to left click down here, and I'm going to paint that away. I'm going to resample, paint that little line away. The secret with the clone stamp tool is you want to resample often, because if you don't, let's say if I sample here, let me sample like right here. If you don't resample often, it's gonna sample wherever that little plus icon is, and it's gonna look real funky. So just resample often. Left click, let me get that out of there. You're just essentially painting with the photo, with an area on the photo. That is your ink. Okay, that kind of got rid of that one. All right. Yeah, that's the only way I know how to get rid of line marks and stuff like that, is to just use the clone stamp tool. Very good question.
All right, we have another fun question.
Awesome.
How would you make a face skinnier in a photo?
Ooh, that's getting super advanced. There is a tool. Oh, I believe it's called I think it's Warp. Let me see here. I'm going to see if I can select it. I'm going to select this area of the face. It's been a while since I've tried this. Right click. I think it's free transform. Maybe it's not. Oh, warp. It is. Okay, free transform warp. And you can drag in the pieces. I will say this gets pretty funky if you are editing a specific area of the face or the body. The warp tool will distort it as much as you would like. Let me turn this layer off. Oh, is that turned off? Okay, good. So I'm going to go to free transform and go to warp. So if you have something in the background, it's going to warp it as well. So for instance, you see I caught a part of her ear on here. So I wanted to, give her a little bit square of a jaw. It's going to distort her neck and her ear, whatever I have selected. So if you want to make a skinnier face, it's possible, but just be really careful of where you're selecting. You want to make sure you get just the part you want to edit. But that warp tool will be your best bet. Lovely. Awesome.
Okay. And how do you recommend doing a cutout of a picture to add elsewhere, either on that original photo or to another photo altogether?
Ooh, perfect question. Okay, so let's say I wanted to get this flower. I'm going to turn off all the attributes. If I wanted to get this flower into the faded man photo, so I'm going to, this is just going to be a quick sketch. I'm going to draw around this flower because I just want the flower. You can do a much better job if you take your time on this. I'm going to select control. I'm going to select C as in cat. I'm going to click over into this faded man photo. And I'm going to select control and I'm going to select V as in Victor. Whoa! Copy pastes it right into the photo. And I just selected control and T so I can shrink it down and give this man a flower. So that process is, selecting your thing that you would like to paste into another photo with the lasso tool. Then you select Control C, Control V once you're in your new photo, and it will paste it right in there. Put this flower right there. Make it into a sunrise. Beautiful. And then I usually just go in and I use the eraser tool, which is E, and I just kind of erase the extra bits that I wasn't able to get out of there my first go around. Great question. Yeah, keep them coming. We have 9 minutes left. If anybody has any other questions.
We have another great question. How would we keep the background black and white, but another image in the photo colorful? So sort of like the highlighting red in a black and white photo, for instance.
Ooh. Okay, that is a good question. There are some color replacement options. Let me think. Let's see. There might be a tool in here. Let's see. Exposure, black and white. This photo was saved in what's called grayscale mode, so this might not be the best example. Let me see if I can change that. RGB color, flatten. Let me see. So if the photo is in grayscale mode, it's going to stay in gray until you change it. But let's see. There are some aspects you can change in this black and white option, but that might not be it. I know that there's a process, I think, in either image or filter that allows you to just have certain colors appear. So if you have typically a color photo and it has a lot of reds in it, and then you turn it black and white, there is a way to get that color back, but I cannot remember how to do it. If I'm playing around and I figure it out, I'll let you know. But for now, I don't know the answer to that question. Let's see. Oops. Try this. Unsaturate. Oh, wait, maybe it's this. Duplicate. Unsaturate. Yes. Eraser. So this is a heavy-handed option. If you have a photo that is in color and you would like it to be in black and white and then have only a certain color show up, this is kind of a backwards way to do it. You can create a background copy and then you can select saturation, turn the saturation way down to where it's black and white. There is another option to do black and white. It'll do it for you. Let me turn that off. And then I select the eraser tool and I just go in and I erase what I want to be in color. It's pretty heavy-handed. You can change the opacity of your eraser to be a little bit more gentle. Probably a much better way to do that, but that's just kind of a very quick and fast way to get just certain areas in color. It's kind of fun. It's like the opposite. It's like coloring, adult coloring. Okay, any other burning questions for me?
None have popped up in the chat as of yet, but
Cool.
thank you so much, Hannah.
All right, happy to help. I'm just gonna keep coloring on this document because it's very, very calming. It's like a good calming activity. Very therapeutic.
As a reminder though, if you do have any final questions with the last 5 minutes, please feel free to post it in the app.
Very good.
Question. Will we have other Photoshop tutorials or anything else upcoming? I can let you guys know we will have an InDesign class on June 24th on creating flyers. Any other classes you are aware of upcoming, Hannah?
Not that I'm aware of. I know we are publishing them on our calendar on the PPL website. So please check there for any upcoming virtual programs and software, stuff like that. We do offer a service called Book a Librarian. We're offering it virtually for now. So if you have a specific aspect of a software that you're interested in learning, as long as it's not too crazy challenging or in depth, we can schedule a one-on-one 30-minute tutorial with you virtually on a software of your choosing. So if there's staff available that know the software, such as Photoshop, you fill out that Book a Librarian form and we can schedule a one-on-one with you to help cover that aspect. I usually just Google Plano Book a Librarian, fill out the form with all of my info. You can tell us what dates and times work for you and we'll give you a call and set it up. So that's an option. Don't know of any classes coming up on Photoshop, but definitely keep an eye out on our calendar. There we go, little tiny lines. Do some outlines. Very good.
All right, we have a final question.
All right.
So we have someone asking if the saved image size can be decreased.
Absolutely. So if you wanted to export at a specific size, let me see here. I changed the image size itself. Right now it is a 10 by 13. So you can, change that if you'd like. Maybe I want to do a 5 and it'll resize it automatically for you to be proportional. That's if you want to resize the inches, like you wanted a very specific photo size by default, or if you wanted to save as, if I wanted to change the image quality to where it would be smaller, that would be an option. By selecting, instead of high or maximum, you can do medium, small, if you wanted a smaller image size, or image quality, I should say. But if you want a very specific size, definitely go up to image, select image size, and change it in there. Okay, I guess that sums it up. Thank you guys so much for attending this virtual program. We appreciate you all being here. Please keep an eye on our social media and our calendar on our page, our website for more virtual programs. It was great having you guys here. Please tune into the next one.